So when I see all these lies in the news, almost every story this week involving lies, big and little lies, I think, why? What's the root cause? Is it about sectarianism festering in America? Well, let me ask one of the researchers behind that study. Eli Finkel is a Northwestern University professor of psychology and management, and he is with me to start us off this hour. Doctor, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Sectarianism 101. Give us the definition. Give us how you see it taking root in America.
Yeah, that we're no longer really just battling over policies, even over ideologies. We've gotten to the point where politics is to a large extent becoming a holy war. Sort of like the Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland in the 1970s. Once you're battling a holy war, the rules about appropriate conduct, the rules about whether lies and violence are appropriate, those things start to get thrown out the window.
I think we have Eli Finkel back, so let's put a before box. Thanks for rejoining us, Professor. Let's get into the reasons why hate of the other side is on the rise, this notion of inhuman, this demonizing the other side. How much blame do you put on media for this phenomenon?
Well, quite a bit. There was a time when there were voices that were able to speak to everybody. Walter Cronkite and others were able to talk to the center. These days, we self-select into our preferred media ecosystems, Fox News, MSNBC, even on Twitter and Facebook, we end up with algorithms that basically just feed us the content that we like. So I do blame the media, although I think we have to acknowledge the hard problem, which is, to a large extent, media companies are pursuing profit. And it looks like people like to have their own outrage stoked at the morally egregious behavior of people on the other side.
It seems to me that hyper-partisan content clouds reality, meaning if you're on social media, you're reading all these ugly stories about what you perceive to be your political opponent. You end up thinking the country's more divided than it really is, right? Yeah, Americans are actually not as split as they appear on social media or Fox.
That is exactly right. That is one of the major findings from the last 5 years in political science and psychology. And frankly, one of the reasons I'm most hopeful is that we're actually battling phantoms, right? If we think about at least the people on the other side, some of the politicians really are as bad as we think they are. But if we think about what Republicans believe, what Democrats believe, we have a grossly distorted perception of what the other side actually believes, how much money the other side actually has. And what that means is that there's room here for us to clarify, like, where is the actual disagreement? How much actual disagreement is there? And the truth is there's far, far less disagreement than we actually think there is.
I was introduced to your work through Nate Cohn of the New York Times. He wrote about it last month. He said, sectarianism has become so powerful among Republicans in part because they believe they're at risk of being consigned to minority status. He said, it's not easy to accept being ruled by a hostile, alien rival. Do you view this as a right-wing phenomenon or both left and right?
Oh, it's happening on both sides, but Nate's correct. There is something a little bit disconcerting as if you're a Republican strategist trying to make sense of how you keep winning national elections. It looks increasingly like it's going to be hard to get to 51%. And so there are a lot of incentives to try to reduce voter turnout among people who are less likely to vote Republicans. So they really do face some challenges that push them toward some anti-democratic tendencies.
And that's a story we're going to keep seeing for years to come as these laws pass state legislatures, et cetera. So, Finkel, your most recent book was titled The All or Nothing Marriage, How the Best Marriages Work. That's really been your specialty in many years, looking at psychology and marriages and relationships. So how did you come to study political sectarianism?
Well, I wrote the book, the All or Nothing Marriage, is a book that really focuses on how we can make our marriages better. And when I looked around me at what was happening in our political system here in the U.S., I realized that we basically built the most toxic marriage, the most toxic union, if you will, that I can imagine. Oh. If you try to set yourself the goal of saying, well, what's everything we know about how relationships work? What would it look like to build the worst marriage you can think of? Well, you would maximize the amount of contempt you have for your spouse. You would interpret all the behavior from your spouse in the most nasty way that you can. You would surround yourself by people who completely hate your spouse. You can go down the list and look, we've built it.
You know, my wife's listening. She's going to laugh at this, but she knows I'm a big talker. All I ever want to do is talk. But isn't that the solution? Isn't the way out of this sectarianism? We have to hear from each other?
Honestly, I don't really see many shortcuts to fixing the problem. Like, we need to have some level of open-mindedness. As I said before, one of the things that I think we should view as very promising is the fact that the demonized people on the other side aren't nearly as bad as we think they are. They aren't nearly as different from us as we think they are. And so you can imagine sitting on the marital therapist couch. What is that therapist going to do? You know, she's going to confront you on your aggrieved narrative about how evil the other side is and that our side is the only one that's right. And it's not that the grievance is always incorrect. Grievance in relationships, grievance in politics, they're often legitimate. But if we're going to stay a nation, if we're going to value patriotism in general, that there's something here that we'd like to salvage about America, it looks like we're going to have to find a way to listen to each other and understand each other much more than we do at the moment.
Yeah, and marriages or democracy, it's got to have honesty to thrive. Eli Finkel, thank you so much for being here.